Good evening. My name is Gary Hutton. Welcome to Community Crossfire, another point of view with your host that's not here tonight, Mr. Norman Oliver. We want to thank Mr. Oliver for an opportunity to utilize some of his time this evening to come to you once again, to just kind of update folks on, for those of you who don't know, update you on the continuing events at the City of Wilmington's Port of Wilmington. I'm here tonight with my co-host, Mr. John Flaherty, who has spent a great amount of time working on this project, along with a couple of distinguished representatives from 1694-1, their president, Mr. Julius Cephas, and a member of their executive board, right, Mr. Clarence Bird. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So we wanted to just take this opportunity to kind of review where things are, and maybe you all can enlighten us in terms of where we are now. And I know that the Kinder Morgan has suspended. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but they suspended their interest in the Port of Wilmington and currently have suspended negotiations with the Diamond State Port Corporation. So to get us to that point, a lot of things happen. So why don't you all kind of help us out, just to recap a little bit, John, in terms of how we got there.
You know, a lot of us probably realize that the Port of Wilmington started in 1923 and was owned by the City of Wilmington. And then in 1995, the port was sold to the state of Delaware, and a state agency took over the operations of the Port of Wilmington, and that state agency was called the Diamond State Port Corporation. And last year, or the last couple of years, there was talk about leasing part of the port, leasing the entire port, privatizing, whatever you want to call it. And I think it was in last December that Kinder Morgan, the third or fourth largest energy company in the country, they were announced by the Diamond State Port Corporation as the, quote, preferred bidder. So that was in December. And since December, a lot of us have, and I'm the lobbyist for the longshoremen, we were anxiously awaiting a firm proposal by this company, Kinder Morgan, on what they plan to do at the Port of Wilmington. In the intervening process, the state legislature decided that they were not about to give up such a valuable asset like the Port of Wilmington without some kind of oversight and review by the State Senate and State House. And Senate Bill 3 was introduced, and it gave the Delaware General Assembly oversight responsibilities for any transfer of interest in the port. And the bill passed the Senate 11 yeas, 9 nays, and 1 not voting. It went over to the House, and it passed unanimously with an amendment giving the Bond Bill Committee the primary point of review for any kind of transferred interest in the port. Went back to the Senate. It passed 13 yeas, 7 nays, 1 night voting, and Governor Markell, to his credit, signed that bill into law. So without the governor's support, without the support of the senators and House members, the people of Delaware would not have had a review of a proposal, and it turns out that proposal was never forthcoming, and the company that won the bid has decided not to provide us a bid, and that's pretty much where we are right now.
Well, it seems like we really have, just to back up a little bit, when the Senate Bill 3 was introduced, I believe that was in response to a statement that had been made that the Diamond State Port Corporation could sign this deal without the input of the General Assembly. Now, this is a major asset for the state of Delaware, and the Diamond State Port Corporation, which is a public corporation but is separate from the state, wanted to enter into a long-term lease, 50 years, I believe, without any input from the General Assembly. They wanted to kind of brief the General Assembly, and I think at that point the General Assembly said, well, wait a minute. This is a pretty important deal. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar deal. We're talking about hundreds of jobs, and we're talking major revenue to the state of Delaware. So shouldn't the General Assembly, it just seems to me reasonable that the General Assembly has some input into this process.
Sure, the Port of Wilmington is, has assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars that came from either city, county, state, or federal sources through, docks and cranes and dredging, and they have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the Port of Wilmington is handled in the most advantageous manner to the taxpayers of the state, and that the employees of the Diamond State Port Corporation, that the commitments made to them are going to be fulfilled in the future. And when the statement was made that we can do whatever we want, I think that kind of galvanized a lot of people, a lot of organizations to say, hey, wait a minute, we're not in the position where we want to just give away a valuable asset. We do want to take a look. We do want to, we trust they know what they're doing, but as Ronald Reagan says, we want to trust and verify. And that's what happened. We verified what they were going to do, and unfortunately, the company that won the bid did not like the fact that a bill was passed that gave the General Assembly the right to verify what was in the bid. And thanks to Governor Markell, we had that bill, Senate Bill 3, he signed, and everybody was on board, and we were waiting for the bid, and they decided not to have their bid scrutinized by the General Assembly members and the greater public at large.
Well, it would just seem to me that that's just a reasonable thing to do, isn't it? That's it. And
Yes.
you all jump in to say, wait a minute, this is a big deal.
Me personally, I want to thank Julius, our president, for stepping forward, looking into the future, recognized what was happening, and took us to the legislation hall and had us to step up and do what was right, made the representatives, the senators, and the legislators. We got John on board, and we just did what we had to do. We were showing that we were not just, excuse me, a small entity, but we also stand for unity and power.
Well, I think you're right, and I think the work that was done here you all should be proud of the work that was done here. Both of you and your entire union and all those folks that were involved should be commended for the work that you did. And I know that there's some folks out there that are not real complimentary at this point, but but the reality is when you guys reached out to folks in the General Assembly, and I know Julius, you can help us in recapping of that, and say, well, wait a minute, this is a major deal,
Yes,
and it's not something that you should enter into lightly. That a deal like this should be entered into soberly, and all the stakeholders need to have an opportunity to know exactly. And if I'm reading it wrong, you tell me, because I'm just,
I agree.
But all of the stakeholders need to know exactly what we're signing up for, and I think that was part of your position, wasn't it, Julius?
Yeah. Thank you, Gary. What I'm here for tonight is, again, it's been a long year and a half, and it's been a serious fight. But I'm here today to thank the community. I mean, the community came out to thank all the people who was involved. What we did was we got a coalition of different people to come together. We got the environmental groups, we got the activists, we got non-union, and we all came together, and everybody, I think one of the best parts about it, everybody stayed in their lane. Everybody did what they was good at, and this is a result of it. But again, I just want to thank everybody, because it was a task, and there's so many people. We're going to name some names tonight about some of the people we're very proud of, and again, but I think what we did, we showed the state and the country what you can do when you organize and stay together. And again, I just want to thank the community for coming out. And first on my list, and if I forget anybody, I apologize, but Senator Marshall,
Okay.
Senate Bill 3.
Robert Marshall.
Yes. I mean, for him to do what he did was great, because without Senate Bill 3, we would have never had no legs to do anything. I mean, Senator Marshall was great. Mayor Williams, at the time he was state rep, he stopped it for a year. There's so many different people, but Senator Marshall was Senate Bill 3. Gary, it was rough. Valerie, State Rep Valerie Longhurst, she, matter of fact, that's the committee. They made sure that it didn't get buried in the committee.
Right.
And this was a serious process. Again, we had the activist, Liz, my girl Liz Allen, I mean, fighting. I'm listening to her every day on the radio, Liz. You got Nancy Wellington with the bloggers. You got Cassandra. You have so many different people who was out there and doing an awesome job. We met with the ministers, and we met at what was the Columbus Inn, and you talking about an all-star cast. I called them the dream team. Pastor Beeman, you had Curry, I think his name.
Pastor Curry.
Pastor Curry. You had Bishop Weeks, Reverend Ty Johnson. You had Livingston. You had Oliver. I mean, it was very intimidating to sit and these guys and ladies.
That was Vince Oliver. That wasn't just Norman Oliver.
Vince Oliver. Yeah. And these pastors and reverends listening, but they didn't take sides. They wanted to hear the facts. I mean, and they listened and very intently asked the right questions. And again, I want everybody to know that the churches do get involved. You know, they might don't always make the noise that we think they should make because they do their investigation. But again, Norman Oliver, he stuck with me from the beginning, where everybody said that something was wrong. Norman stuck with me. And I'd like to give some credit to Mike Bagato. He was on the board. He was the only labor leader who raised questions and didn't accept what they was telling him. Mike Bagato is the only labor leader, and that's very important. I didn't hear from nobody else but Mike, and he asked the right questions. And again, the community got involved. I've never really been into the bloggers and this and that. Every night comments, and it was fascinating. And people need to start reading the blogs because a lot of times the press don't give you the coverage. But the editors in the opinion section been very good to our union. They was fair, and they put both sides out there. Again, I never seen nothing like it. We had the environmental group from Philadelphia, Delaware River Keepers. People was calling, getting involved. Everybody wanted to get involved. And what we dealt with the issues and the facts. We didn't spread no wrong gossip. It was all issues driven. But our union, you know, I want to thank our union, our committee members was out there, and I'm just proud of everybody, you know. I'm proud of everybody. The News Journal called me and asked me about the governor. And I just told him I think he's a great governor. He's a two-term governor. I believe because you disagree with somebody on one issue, that doesn't take away all the work that they've been involved in.
Right.
And I hope that we can work together moving forward, you know, even with Alan Levin. Again, it's just one issue that we disagree on. I disagree with my mom sometimes. That don't mean I don't stop loving her, and she don't stop loving me. But I think the port's going to be in good shape, and a lot of people are nervous and don't be. The port's a moneymaker, and I think everything's going to come together, and the right mind's going to come together and make this thing work. So
I guess I'm listening to you, you know, in the list of all the stakeholders that were involved in this whole effort, and there were many, and I think that it was appropriate for folks to come to the table and say, well, wait a minute, we're concerned about what happens on the Delaware River, and we're concerned about the environment. We're concerned about our community over in South Wilmington. It's appropriate for those folks. Not only do they have a responsibility, I mean, they really do have an obligation to say, well, look, we need to see what's going on here, because what happens at the Port of Wilmington affects a whole lot of people, not only the folks that work at the Port of Wilmington, but folks that are not directly working for the Port of Wilmington, but are affected by that operation. So even, you know, you talked about the ministers and their involvement and the way they came together and started asking some of the tough questions, and the business community, the existing business community at the port.
That was, you know, because sometimes people want to divide. They want to put you against you. And, you know, it's not about union, non-union. It was about the taxpayers, it's about the economy. The non-union business people came together and we worked together.
Right.
Everybody was involved.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it. And if you don't let people divide you, and again, I just thought that To see everybody come together the way they did was a beautiful thing.
Sure. You had the existing labor at the port. You also had the, as Gary mentioned, the Port of Wilmington Maritime Society, which represents the businesses at the port. They expressed grave concern about how you could bring in a pipeline company that's known for transporting liquids like oil or gasoline, and how that's going to be compatible with bananas and fruits. Port of Wilmington has one of the largest dockside facilities in the entire country, refrigerated facilities, where the bananas, the tangerines, the nectarines, all the perishable foods are kept. And how are you going to mix that with oil and coal and coal dust and things like that? So there was a lot of questions, and it was a fair fight. And I can't think of anybody that, at least publicly, except for Delaware Development Office, that was in support of this proposal by Kinder Morgan. And I think that's probably why Kinder Morgan decided not to come forth with their bid, is that they had no support from any corner here in the state of Delaware. And I think they misread the situation, that people want to see the port grow and thrive, but they just couldn't understand how a company that was into pipelines and gasoline had anything to do with perishable foods at the Port of Wilmington.
Let me say something too also. I'm very proud of my legislators. You know, a lot of times politicians get a bum rap. They don't do nothing, they run from adversity. Our legislators stepped up to the plate. They stepped up and they did an awesome job, and we should be proud of that, you know. And again, they listened, they heard our concerns, and they acted on it. And it just made me proud, you know.
And we had the leadership of the Senate Democrats, and over in the House we had the entire leadership.
Right.
Republicans and Democrats supported Senate Bill 3.
So this was a bipartisan issue. We don't hear,
Right.
we hear about bipartisan these days. We just don't see much of it.
Right.
But this was a bipartisan effort. And it was an effort that involved the business community and organized labor, the religious community, the community involved in our concerned about our environment. So we had all these different folks, all these different interests come together and recognizing the commonality in terms of how it would affect all of those different folks.
We had economists, we had Republicans, what's the group, Caesar Rodney?
Caesar Rodney Institute.
I watched this guy break it down with the numbers. He's a Republican, but everybody came together, and you know, and they dealt with the facts, and I've never seen nothing like it. We have a guy from DART, the president. I can't think of the president's name, but I just wanted to.
Andy Longacre.
He deserved a lot of credit. He spoke up in the committee meeting for this, and you know, you just had so many people, Gary. Just
Don't forget Al Jackson from Smyrna.
Al Jackson.
He was a dynamite.
Yeah, I mean, Liz, Nancy, like it says, Cassandra. I mean, Capis, I think that's his name. Kavitz. This guy, if you ever want to read a blog, this guy is a genius. I mean, there's so much and so many different people, and again, I'm just so proud. And again, I'm hoping to work forward with the governor and Alan Levin. We just disagreed on one issue, and I want everybody to understand that. And the port will do fine, but I'm just hoping that everybody understand one thing: when you organize and you deal with the facts, good things can happen. You know, real good things can happen. And Gary, I'm gonna say publicly to both of y'all. Y'all both did an outstanding job, both of you guys, and I appreciate it. And John, you
Well,
to me,
he's Johnny Carson, I'm Ed McMahon.
Okay. Well, I ain't heard nobody laugh yet, but you like
I
a
know
walking
Johnny
cycle.
Carson's dead. What about Ed?
You like a walking encyclopedia, and it was a lot of great things. And again, with the IMAC, it was the dream team. I'm like, you know, at guard, I'm looking like at point guard, Pastor Beebe, and at forward, Bishop Weeks. I'm like, what?
I think Bishop Weeks was a power forward.
I mean, it was
taller.
But you know what though? And they didn't just come in there and take her aside.
Right.
They didn't come in there and say, okay, because you come to our church. They didn't come, they listened, and they asked the tough questions. And I can respect that. And again, a lot of people were very nervous and very afraid. And again, like you said, the governor, got to give the governor credit. He signed Senate Bill 3.
Right.
You know.
Without his signature, we wouldn't have that oversight, and
I mean,
which kind of scares Kinder
But the
Morgan.
governor signed it because I think he recognized that it was the right thing to do. how do you argue against transparency? How do you argue against allowing all those folks that should be involved in the process an opportunity to see precisely what is being offered? And one of the things that concern me, I will tell you this, Julius, one of the things that concerned me throughout this process is, there was some folks, I think, that made some statements that were unfair to you in terms of your approach to this whole process, and some I believe some statements that were not fair and quite frankly not true. I mean, it's good to see that you're ready to look past that.
But in the heat of battle, I was a boxer and proud I won the Golden Gloves. But in the heat of battle, sometimes things are said. But once the fight's over, you notice boxers always go hug each other and mutual respect.
You want the governor going to hug?
Oh, no question about it.
All right.
And I won the ping pong. I was a ping pong champ. I heard he was a ping pong champ, and I've asked him this years ago. I would love to play the governor in ping pong. I really would. I heard he's a great ping pong player. So, but again, in the heat of battle, things are said and things are done, but I don't think people feel that way personally.
Well, you heard it here first on Stormin' Norman's Community Crossfire, another point of view, because he likes for this show to have breaking news. So you heard it here first that President Julius Cephas has offered to play Governor Jack Markell. And it's almost, I guess, maybe a challenge to a ping pong game, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I heard he's very good, and I think I'm very good. But can we go to a commercial and play the iMac and we'll come right back?
Hi, I'm Pastor Beeman, President of the all-new Interdenominational Ministers Action Council of Wilmington, Delaware, and Newcastle County, inviting you to our annual Good Friday 7 Last Words of Christ worship service. The worship will be held at Full Gospel Baptist Church on 5th and Washington Streets in Wilmington, Delaware. The worship begins promptly at 12 noon. 7 of our city's finest preachers will be bringing 7 7-minute meditations from Jesus' final words from the cross. The iMac Choir, under the direction of Evangelist Serena Ford, will be providing the music. You will be tremendously blessed. See you on Good Friday. Grace and peace.
Welcome back to Community Crossfire, another point of view with your host, Norman Oliver, who is not here tonight. And again, we want to thank Mr. Oliver for an opportunity to utilize this time. I'm your co-host, Gary Hutt, with Ed McMahon.
Alias John Flaherty.
Alias John Flaherty to my right. And we also have our distinguished guest, Clarence Bird, and President Julius Cephas from 1694-1.
Gary, can I say something? And also, can Ivan put the union's website up? Also, Charles Potter, he spoke out a lot. You know, Charles was out there on the news media. He did a great job. Tommy Gordon, county exec, he did a great job. I mean, you just had so many different people out there fighting. You know, Bethany.
Bethany Hall Long, the state
Yeah.
senator. You had State Representative John Kowalka, who
Oh, my
was going to
God.
bring the bill up directly on the floor unless you had a committee hearing on that.
State Senator Harris McDowell.
Harris McDowell was,
Yeah, he was. Yes, Margaret Rose, Senator Margaret
Senator
Rose.
Margaret
She was
Rose,
a
Senator.
co-sponsor in the Senate bill. You know, and I must say the best vice president anybody can ever have is Paul Cutler, and he did an awesome job in our executive committee, and with Clarence Bird and our whole committee did an awesome job in our union.
Yeah, Richard and Michael and Sally and
Yeah.
Emmett. We all stuck together as one, and behind our president, vice president.
it had a huge impact. We had 10 or 12 longshoremen coming down to the
Right.
legislative hall, and you're talking to the legislators directly, and they're getting the scoop firsthand. It has a huge impact.
Yes.
It really was democracy at work, and you guys did a great job.
I really enjoyed going through the process of going and sitting, listening, watching John and Joyce, and the whole mechanism work. It was my first time ever seeing it really work. You can watch it on TV, but it's really good to be sitting in the hall listening to different people debate and talk about.
Well, I think one of the other things it showed is that when folks are organized, your voice, and a lot of times folks will tell you that you're a small group of people and your voice doesn't count. Well, when you put those voices together with some other voices,
Right.
it makes a big difference. And clearly, this is a time that your voice was heard,
Definitely so.
and it made a difference.
Yeah.
It made a huge difference because it only passed the Senate by one vote the first
Yeah,
time.
the first time.
If it hadn't got the 11 votes, the issue would have been killed and it would have been dead, and the Port of Wilmington would have been given away without any kind of oversight or review by proper authorities. So it was a
And I also
Good vote.
must say too, I'd like to thank Council President Theo Gregory. When I called him, he let us come down there, get on TV, the committee, and Theo Gregory, I really appreciate his effort because I called him, he made a schedule right away for us, you know what I mean? He put us on there right away. And again, Rick Ryan, the guys outside of the gate, non-union guys, the business community, they did a great job. And it was just like I said again, I know I'm forgetting names, and as far as the politicians, that's why I'd like to thank the legislators, the House and the Senate.
I know J.J. Johnson was also a name.
Yeah,
that-
JJ gave you all a tour, didn't he?
Yes, JJ gave us a
Yeah.
tour. That's what really inspired me because he just took us around and introduced us to the legislation, whole legislation. We were a guest for a day, and it was
And-
great.
Yeah, I think the whole idea that you could give away an asset like the Port of Wilmington without any public review or any public accountability, I think energized everybody to, hey, look, let's slow this process down. We do have a right to review the operations there. We do have a right to have transparency, and I think that's what galvanized everyone into action, and I think the result was that the public was given that right to know, and we will have a right to know in the future.
Man, we're grown-up people, and we need a little bit more when you're dealing with a deal this size or any kind of
Yes.
deal. We need a little bit more than a trust me, and it's going to be all right. Well,
Right. I just hope people learn that again, organization, organized, and coming together, and working for the common good. It says something again. If you could read the article today was in the paper about the port and the union's point of view, and they did a nice editorial, so everybody get a chance to look at the editorial today.
You want me to read this?
Yeah.
Okay, what was accomplished by Delaware Senate Bill 3, sponsored by Senator Robert Marshall, and supported by the legislature, union, business community, environmentalists, bloggers, and local community activists in regards to the proposed privatization of the Port of Wilmington. On March 7th, Kinder Morgan announced that it was suspending its interest in the Port of Wilmington. That saved jobs. It did not eliminate them. Our focus was to ensure the viability of the port long-term and not sacrifice 30-year mortgages of working families for a 3-year promise to protect the jobs for a select few. Our intent was to protect 30-year pensions and jobs and not accept a 3-year promise that would see at its end a potential elimination of local job opportunities for residents that invest in this community. Our efforts in the state legislature and the heroic efforts made on behalf of working families was to ensure that promises and commitments would be kept and not subject to the changing whims of a corporation committed more to its own bottom line instead of understanding that if our futures and interests were tied together, then we would all rise and prosper together. Kinder Morgan's refusal to keep his promise to submit a viable proposal for over a year may demonstrate that its intentions were not as stated. Its support of the legislature's recent action to provide transparency in the process would have demonstrated their commitment to make this work, not just for themselves, but for the workers, union and non-union, business contractors, and the community as well. Oil energy giant Kinder Morgan took for granted that we were willing to deal with a company whose history and association with ex-Enron leadership would give any reasonable person cause for the need for transparency, clarity, and understanding. We were willing to accept a temporary promise under these circumstances and wanted a relationship that provided for a partnership without taking away the rights of a company to do business, but instead protected the community from possible traumatic events that had been witnessed in the past by their former partners that resulted in lost pensions, elimination of jobs, lives destroyed, communities left in ruins, and an environment damaged by toxic chemicals and contaminated waste. We did not refuse to meet with a partner willing to invest in the future of the city and the port. We refused to sell out the future generations of our children. We refused to endanger the lives of residents in the community. We refused to sacrifice a commitment of workforce safety for the immediate gratification of a promise for short-term gains and the expense of long-term sustainability. Kinder Morgan had a choice: to work with the best workforce in the nation and deal fairly with a supportive community, or continue to do business at the expense of others without regard to quality of life and well-being. We are pleased with the outcome and stand ready to work with any company willing to invest its interest with the people of this community and region. But we expect transparency and a demonstrated commitment to the Port of Wilmington's long-term success. And that was from Julius Cephas, president of ILA 1694-1.
And
Well said.
thank you. And again,
Well said.
Thank you. Again, everybody stepped up to the plate, And again, I just hope that we can work with the governor, work with everybody. And I'm just proud of the state of Delaware. I'm just so proud that everybody came together. I'm just proud.
Did a good job.
On that note, I think that we've said what we needed to say.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a break shortly. Again, when I come back, I'm out of here. When the show comes back, you'll have another host here. But again, thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
Julius.
But again, Liz Allen, Norman Oliver, Al Jackson, Nancy, Sandra. Again, thank you, and thank you. I can't thank y'all enough for what y'all have done to stand up for what's right.
Thank
You got something you want to say, Clarence?
I just want to thank everybody that supported us also, the unions, the outside port, the whole state of Delaware, because if it wasn't for the #1 state, it wouldn't happen. Thank you.
Good. And one other person we didn't mention, but the NAACP did testify at the Wilmington City Council hearing that time. They were on our side.
So thank you, NAACP. Thank you all of the folks that participated. And I'm sure as soon as we get off of this segment, we're going to go out in the hall, and somebody's going to remember somebody that we forgot to mention.
Oh, yeah.
So I ask you for your forgiveness up front, because somebody got missed. There were so many people out there
So many.
that were
Yes.
involved. If you got missed, charge it to our heads and not to our hearts. And thank you for your continued participation, and good night.
Good job.